Welcome to the Bassline. Becca Joyce is an incredible woman. She is a mother, she is a grandmother, she is a health freedom activist, and an incredible purveyor of information. She is a powerhouse on Facebook and has a great Substack. I proudly introduce to the Bassline audience the fearless Becca Joyce. How are you this morning, Becca?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So, you've had quite a personal experience before we get into some of your activism and your information sharing. Would you mind
Mhm.
sharing with us your very serious and considerable experience with vaccines as it pertains to you and your family?
Um, yeah, I think the one that I'll discuss is regarding my experience in the hospital. Uh, a year ago, last January, I almost died. I was
Yeah.
missing, I was missing 3 liters of blood, and I had several pulmonary embolisms in my lungs. And I was put in a position where I was either going to accept the vaccinated blood or I was going to have to risk death because unvaccinated blood it's not readily available. They don't have anything in place for individuals. And, I think most of us take for granted that we're just never going to be in a position where we would need an emergency transfusion. I know that it never entered my mind because I was like, well, I live a pretty simple life. I try to be healthy and everything. And I never thought in a million years that I would be put in that position. I was, they tried to basically medically kidnap me by one doctor trying to make me look like I was out of my mind and then trying to get another doctor to sign off on it. They lied to me for 4 days saying that I could not receive a directed donor, which I found out later after contacting a patient advocate that yes, I could. But the problem with that is that that process takes 6 to 8 weeks. And typically, by the time you've made it 6 to 8 weeks, your blood is probably recovered. So there's no emergency help for a person. So this is basically a way of um, force vaccinating people through transfusions and trying to abdicate their rights when they're in the hospital. And I know for myself, I know my rights, I know my authority, and when your blood count is down to 6.3, which is how low mine got, it's very hard because you don't have enough blood supply to actually operate your brain and your organs at the same time. And so for myself, even with as tenacious as I am with this kind of thing, it was even difficult for myself to actually advocate. And but I was able to. But here's the thing: if you can't effectively communicate your rights, then you're more likely than not going to end up with them basically saying that you don't know your rights and we're going to take over because you're making a poor decision. And it was pretty bad. I was in the hospital for a week and I got very close to death. And in the process of being there, instead of I was having migraines, and it was because I had no pillow and because of the low, oxygen saturation. And they tried give it. They didn't try. They actually gave me Norco, which, if you know anything about that type of painkiller, you can be completely addicted within 3 days of taking that medication. And so, if I was not conscious of how addictions are formed, I could have ended up being a full blown addict from that experience just because they wouldn't give me a pillow. Um, it was horrendous, the things that were going on. And, they were even trying to prevent me from being able to list all of the donors who were willing to come up and donate the way that they had everything set up. Um, you could not donate the same day that you were getting tested to see if you were a match. And which is very complicated because if you've got people driving a distance or if they are having to take time off of work to come and do that, then it becomes very complicated and it becomes a very drawn out, long process. And I don't think that that is an accident. I think it's on purpose to try to force people into receiving it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, a lot of coercive techniques they seem to have readily available to them. Could you give us your COVID experience in a summary? I mean, everyone sort of had their own learning curve about the whole thing. Everyone experienced different things in terms of a change in their social
Mhm.
landscape, losing friends, and that kind of thing. Just what are some of the key points in terms of your COVID experience, and how long did it take you to sort of make your own assessment in terms of what was going on?
Well, so 2 weeks before the pandemic or scandemic happened, I was sitting in my office by myself and I was having a moment with God, and God was showing me all these attributes that I had, that I was always the first, to stand up and volunteer, even if I didn't know what I was doing, that I was always, um, willing to step out and take a risk and, um, you know, to to step up and help people. And he was showing me all these attributes about myself that I didn't even notice about myself. And then he said, "Won't you do this for me?" And I didn't understand what that was necessarily pertaining to. I just knew that he was asking me to step up for him the same way that I would step up for others and in my job. And in that vision, I was getting shown my grandchildren, my children, and it moved me to tears. It truly had a huge impact on me. And then 2 weeks later, we had a complete shutdown in the country. And I started coming across different documents that people needed, and I started kind of collecting those things. I had a personal experience at U-Haul where I got kicked out because I wouldn't wear a mask, and it resulted in two police officers showing up. And the gentleman had said to me, he goes, "If you had a mask exemption card, I would have let you in here." And I was like, "Well, say no more." And I went home and I created the mask exemption card. And then I created the vaccine exemption card. And then I created a page that had over 40 free pre written legal documents that could be edited for people. And then I got licensed as a minister so that I could issue religious exemptions, because I was seeing that people were getting denied for the same 7 reasons. And I was like, well, I see where the loopholes are and I can close those gaps. So I started doing that. And in the course of it, I ended up helping over 276,000 people, most of those people for free. And that was a lot of my experience. I did there was plenty of times where I was on the phone at 2 a.m. talking to a mother who was terrified she was going to lose her job and not be able to provide for her children. I sacrificed my relationships. I sacrificed time with my family to take care of people that I didn't even know, because all I could hear in my mind was God saying, "Won't you do this for me?" And then I would see my grandchildren's face, and I knew I could not answer to God and to my grandchildren and say, "I had these talents, I had these skills, I had this knowledge, and I did nothing." So that was a lot of my experience. And then it expanded out into getting certified in universal human rights across 132 countries. And I just kept kind of branching out further and further.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Um, so I guess let's talk about some of these certifications that you've acquired and how you became quite an expert in educating people about their rights. Could you tell us about some of the process of you getting that background for one, and then how you employed it to help people?
Well, I, I guess I just felt led to do it. And when I was, when I would read documents or I would, read the Constitution or, law or anything like that, it's almost like God would illuminate specific things and highlight those things for me to pay attention to. And I just, I guess I kept seeing like weaknesses in certain areas. And so then I was like, well, let me do this so that I can strengthen myself here, so that I can better facilitate and help individuals. You know, I guess that's mostly, what I did. One of the things that I did more recently is I got certified in as a PTSD specialist. And the reason that I did that is because I learned that if you can properly document narcissistic abuse, then you can actually prosecute it in court. And if you can do that with an individual, then you can also do that with an institution that is causing PTSD as well as um, functioning in a narcissistic way, that can actually be prosecuted in court. And so I just have been working on that. And I've been working on also taking things like the universal human rights and translating it into based on other countries' laws and their constitutions, as well as then having it translated into their languages. And so far, I've done 13 different countries.
Oh, that's incredible. Perhaps you can go into that just a little bit more in terms of what are some of the specific things that you impart when you're educating people about their rights? What are some of the key points here in terms of what people should know about their own autonomy and their own basic rights on the planet?
The number one thing for them to understand is that their rights are inalienable and they are given to them by God, which means that no man can take it away. And it's also important for them to understand that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is it's biblically based, and that any rule, law, mandate, executive order, policy that contradicts the original Constitution is nulled and void. So state constitutions that contradict the original Constitution have no holding. And so it's important for them to understand when you're looking at states like New York, California, Oregon, Washington, some of the more, Illinois, some of the more difficult states, the only thing that they can really do is convince you that you don't have rights. So then you just surrender it to them because they truly don't have that authority. The word mandate does not even carry force of law. It's just simply used for the purpose of persuading the public. And so once you know this and you're grounded in it and you're confident in it, then you're able to articulate it. You're able to stand in that confidence, and they can't abdicate your rights. They cannot take that away. But it's important to understand that sometimes the people who are implementing these so-called policies or mandates, some of those people don't even know that what they're doing is wrong. And so it's important for us to have patience with them and to try to use that as an opportunity to educate them. And then some of them just flat out don't actually care, but at least give them the opportunity to be perceived as innocent instead of someone who is actively actually going aggressively towards taking away your rights, because most people don't know. And those are the key points. And the way that I look at it is that if I think of a horse with the little blinders on running the race. You have to have those blinders on so that you don't get distracted by these extra things that they try to make you scared of. You have to understand your rights are inalienable and that anything that contradicts the original Constitution is void and nothing else matters after that point. And once you're confident in that, you're good. But one of the other things that I learned more recently that I think is very important, I don't hear anybody talking about, is that what they are doing is they are going in and they are changing the definitions of words, and they are taking away and giving power to words that didn't originally exist. So it's essentially like going in and changing the Constitution without changing the Constitution. It's a very covert way of removing people's rights. And my concern is that you're going to have a lot of people when they try to do this again, because what they do once, they're going to try doing again, is that you're going to have a lot of people who are going to think that they know what to do. And then when time comes, they're going to be surprised because they're going to find out that the definition of the words were changed for the Constitution, thereby changing what it actually means. So you have to actually, you need to actually understand that and stay up on it.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Um, I actually first became aware of you on Facebook, and you are very prolific on Facebook, I would say. And I was wondering if you could give us some insight in terms of how you built up your presence on Facebook and what your sort of tactical approach is, because you produce a lot of great content and you seem to get a lot of engagement and seem to have a lot of people who are sort of aware of your Facebook page as a health freedom resource. How did that come about? How did you develop your presence, and what's your process in content production on Facebook?
Well, right now I'm being shadow banned. So I don't have very good visibility right now, but they've taken down 11 of my accounts, so I've had to rebuild it that many times. Um, it's just staying consistent, making sure that you do your best to deliver accurate information, do your due diligence. Try not to post, knee jerk posts based on, whatever political theater is going on, and just stay on topic. Because if you go off topic, then you're going to upset your algorithms, and then you're not going to reach the people that actually want to see your content. Um, and just stay consistent. Don't, like I said, don't bounce around on topics, and stay consistent. And when people over time, they see that there's a consistency with a certain level of quality, then they begin to trust you. And then you begin to kind of be their source for what they know that they can turn to. Because most people, they're working, very long hours, and they don't have the time to keep up on things. And they need a place where they can go and actually trust whatever it is that they're, reading. And a lot of times when I come up with my content, it's normally a repetitive thought that God is giving me, and, kind of like an intuitive nudge, as I would describe it. And then I go and I do a little bit of research. It always checks out. And then from there, I formulate an article, and I just try to let God guide me on what he wants to expose. And that's typically how I do a lot of it.
That makes a lot of sense. Just give me a moment, if you don't mind. I'm going to pause and share with the audience different ways in which they can support the Bassline Health Freedom Radio Show. And first of all, folks, this is a pre-recorded episode, so no calls today. And we have, first of all, another 5 to 8 frequency jam session scheduled for May 24th at Rock Mill Fitness. The address there is 274 Lenox Avenue, just a little bit south of 124th Street. Doors are at 3:30. The music starts shortly thereafter. Please join us Sunday, May 24th, 3:30 p.m. at Rock Mill Fitness, 274 Lenox Avenue. We'd love to see you there. We've been having a great time, and we would love to make this a place where folks can meet in person and actually, get a vibe in a real life human setting instead of just online where we're often communicating. Also, of course, this program is an affiliate of frontierfarm.com. That's FRONTIERPHARM.com. They are leaders in the chlorine dioxide movement use the discount code the Bassline. That's capital THE space capital BASSLINE. Please check out the catalog at frontierfarm.com. And the code again is the Bassline, capital T, capital B, the space in between. Also, we have IPTV television, the most incredible deal in television viewing. And the website there is privateiptvaccess.com. The code is J Hosea, capital J, capital HOSEA. Subscribe to my Substack. It's Jeremiah Hosea on Substack. You can look me up in the search bar or type in jeremiahhosea.substack.com. Please subscribe for free if you cannot be a paid subscriber. If you can be a paid subscriber, that's very much appreciated. And please check out my latest article as well. It's called Circles, Volume 1. You can support my music at jeremiahhosea.com. You can buy the theme song for this program. That's jeremiahhosea.com. And of course, I'm a chess teacher as well, and I'm the founder of remotelearningchess.com. So if you don't know the game, please contact me. I'll teach you from scratch. If you know a little bit but never learned any theory, I'll be very excited to share with you some ideas and some things that can help you have more fun with the game, to take your game further. And my lessons, I must say, are very rich on chess history, which I notice a lot of chess instructors tend to neglect. But we'll look at chess through an historical lens, including going back and looking at games that are 400 years old, sort of the origin of chess theory, into Philidor in the 1700s and Morphy and Anderson in the 1800s, all the way up to Wilhelm Steinitz, the first world champion of chess, Lasker, Capablanca, and then all the way up to the modern game as we know it today. So please contact me for a chess lesson. I am the founder of remotelearningchess.com. Also, if you're a homeschooler, please include chess in your homeschooling curriculum. I guarantee you it will enrich the overall content of the curriculum. So all that being said, we're going to get back to our discussion here. We have a great guest, that is Becca Joyce. She is a human rights activist. She's a health freedom fighter, and she does a lot to educate people about their rights, about the dangers of vaccines, about the machinations of the what I call the military medical industrial complex. Becca, so in your journey, could you tell us some of what you've discovered about vaccines writ large? Because the listeners of this program know that when I started this program, I was not an anti-vaxxer, and I said as much. And then at a certain point, I said, you know what? I'm an anti-vaxxer at this point based on what I've learned. And now I'm past that title. I'm a vaccine abolitionist by now. But what was, yeah, I mean, what was some of your learning process in terms of what's going on with all these vaccines, the increased vaccine schedule, the correlation with autism, the correlation with chronic health issues? What have you learned, and what have been some of the most important resources you may have come across?
Boy, that's a broad scope. Um, well, I mean, a lot of my research has been more recently regarding SIDS, and and just how it impacts, how the vaccine impacts the brain, how acetaminophen as well as polysorbate will weaken the blood-brain barrier. So then what ends up happening is then the aluminum and formaldehyde and whatever other ingredients are in there ends up going in, and a lot of times it goes into the medulla and it'll cause inflammation in the medulla, but it can also go into the amygdala, and it can go into the hippocampus, which then will affect the medulla, which is the respiration and the the, the rhythm of your heart, your cardiac rhythm, and that can actually cause SIDS. But it does far more than that because it will actually cause a person to have their entire nervous system disrupted, which is what we're seeing with individuals who have ADD, ADHD, that has autism, where they're just hypersensitive. And, but I believe that vaccines, I believe that one, the reason that they want mothers to vaccinate in utero is because then you will never have evidence that you ever had a healthy child. And it makes it far easier for them to blame it on genetics. And I believe that that's also why they want to, immediately upon birth, before they know anything about that child, they want to inject that little baby. And so it's concerning. Because I believe that what is happening is that there's a lot of diseases and degenerative conditions that we develop over time that actually it originates from the vaccines because it destroys the bedrock of our health, of our immunity, and that are not being necessarily contributed to the vaccination. And because it shows up so much later, you could have cancer, you could all have a lazy eye, you could have depressive issues, you could have all kinds of issues that pop up. And if you start looking up the ingredients and what those ingredients can do on an individual basis, and then also combined, then you'll start to see a broader scale of all the ways that your health or the health of your child can be impacted.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder myself if some of our just regular physical ailments are related to vaccines we may have received as children, when people just suddenly
Mhm.
have, soreness in their knee or in their shoulder, or, aside from the autoimmune issues, cancers, and all these other things. I wonder if some of these adjuvants are remaining in the
Mhm.
body and leading to just regular physical problems, hernias, issues with our muscles and bones. And I wonder just really how
Mhm.
much research has been done in regard to that.
Yeah, right.
Um,
And one
you
of the
have,
things
go
that they've
ahead.
never done is they've never done a successful study, especially in regards to the way that these vaccines interact in combination. So it would be next to impossible for them to say to have done a proper study because you've got different brands of the vaccinations on top of different amounts, and not every parent has every vaccination done. So the broad range of combinations that can actually exist, there is really no way for them to even do a study to be able to say, um, 100% this is safe for your child. And I was always vaccine hesitant. And but then when I had my own personal experience where my son flatlined, then I was 100% against it, because once you've held your child in your arms and they're lifeless, that's terrifying. Um, I won't go into all that, but after that point, and doing a lot more research, and at one point I was an admin of a group called My Child's Vaccine Reaction, which was taken down around the time where just before the pandemic. There was over 129,000 parents in that group, and everybody was sharing all these stories of things that happened. And I came to the conclusion that any parent in their right mind, if they actually knew the risks, that there's no way that anybody would ever vaccinate. If they truly knew the risk and they understood the level of damage that can happen, nobody would do it. And that's why they can't truly give the information that's needed for a parent to actually give true consent.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree with what you said there. Um, I would like to talk about your rather impressive Substack. It seems like you're relatively new to Substack, but
Hmm.
you published a lot of really impressive articles and you go into some really specific topics that would be really helpful to people if they took a look at your work. Can you tell us about your Substack, just sort of your process around that and some of the articles or some of the highlights that people could look forward to when they subscribe to your Substack?
Well, much of a following there yet because I'm very new to it, but I try to put my in-depth articles there. You know, you're not going to find like memes there or anything like that. It's going to be all very content rich. So if that's what you're looking for, then that's definitely what you would want. It's going to be like all in one spot. And it's really centered around human rights, the Constitution, Nuremberg. I do have translations into 13 languages for some of the information, and then information about different ways that vaccination can impact your life. And just I try to make it as educational as possible, and I try to I think that sometimes this information, it's hard to kind of weed out. So I like to try to be, in a sense, a one-stop shop, like where you can get all the goods right there.
That's great. And yeah, like I said, I strongly recommend that everyone subscribe to Becca's Substack immediately. You can look up at Becca Joyce. That's BECCAJOYCE and subscribe right away. Become a free or even better yet, a paid subscriber. You will not regret it. You will be treated to quite a bit of really well presented information. And that takes me to the topic of what are some of the various things that we can do as health freedom activists? Because I think we might all be a little bit tired by now of just repeating the endless list
Mhm.
of injustices we've experienced and witnessed.
Mhm.
It's so easy to say this is so terrible and that's so terrible. And we may be correct. It is quite terrible, but at some point we have to take action. We have to figure out what we as individuals can do. And there's so many things that we could do, but one thing that we can do is we can support some of the people who have been outspoken already, such as yourself, such as this program, the Bassline. If you take it
Mhm.
upon yourself to share this information, you're actually doing a great deed, in my opinion. But what are some of your thoughts, Becca, in terms of how we should be oriented as health freedom activists in this critical moment?
Well, at some point we have to understand that talking into an echo chamber about the things that we all already know isn't really accomplishing much. And what we need boots on the ground. And if that means getting certified in something, if that means getting a degree in something, then that's what you got to do. And for myself, what I've chosen to do is I'm actually actively in the process of signing up to become a paralegal, because what I have found is that a paralegal is really the backbone of an attorney. The paralegal is the one who goes and does the interviews, that takes down the testimonials. They are the person who does the case study for the attorney. They are the one who collects all the evidence. And for instance, if you are an individual who has already spent 10,000 hours of your time in educating yourself on vaccines or a myriad of the injustices in the world, then one of the best things that you could do, is to go and actually become a paralegal, because without these attorneys having paralegals that are well versed in these subjects, you're going to have individuals who end up in court or would like to sue but cannot find an attorney to take it on because they don't have the proper knowledge. And that's what the paralegal is there to do, is to basically say, look, we've got we've got an individual here who has a child that had SIDS, and they had the vaccine this much time before this took place, and let's make sure that they don't go to jail. Um, if we don't have paralegals who have that comprehension and have the ability to get the various studies and all that type of information, then we have ill-equipped attorneys. And that means that we're going to have people who are in the judicial system that can't be helped. My goal up until this point has always been to help people before they reach that point, before it ever reaches a court system. But now I'm beginning to understand that, I always knew that the judicial system was very corrupt. But now I'm putting my focus in a slightly different area just so that I can equip myself better to be of a greater use to society. I personally live by the principles that you don't come here just to be self-serving. You're not supposed to be here just to get your, to clock into your 9 to 5 and buy the things that you want. You're supposed to leave, you have an obligation to leave this world in a better condition than you received it in. And, and I live my life based on that. And so I would say, look for what it is that you're missing so that you can basically help to substantiate your knowledge. I think most of us know that the more degrees and the more certifications you receive, probably the more ignorant you are. But when you already have that base knowledge, those certifications can actually become a fantastic weapon for you when it comes to fighting for justice.
I agree. Sounds like very good advice. And if I'm not mistaken, are you scheduled to give a presentation in Europe at some point soon?
Germany. I'm supposed to go to the German parliament and speak with them, I believe in November, as far as I know right now. And it's regarding COVID, what has taken place. And I think that, going and getting certified as a PTSD specialist, and then also having certification, which covers 42 countries, and then being certified in universal human rights, which covers 132 countries. By doing those types of things, it gives you a better standing with them. Because one of the things that happens, whether you're going down to the school board, whether you're speaking to Congress or you're speaking to the parliament, the first thing they want to know is, what do you do? They want to know your background, because they're gauging how much credibility that they're going to put into anything you say. And you could have something very valid to say, and you could even be a better speaker than myself or someone else. But if you don't have those certifications, if you don't have those degrees, it's going to be kind of in one ear and out the other. And if that's what's necessary to give you the proper standing with them, to gain that respect, so that when you say, look, the way that the government is structured, the way that the medical institutions is structured, is causing people to have PTSD and complex PTSD, that we cannot be doing this to people, that it abdicates their universal human rights, that it is against the Nuremberg Code. Then that's what we have to do. We have to step up and do those things. And um, you know or if we're not going to do it, then we need to step up and we need to support the people who are doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really agree with that point, which reiterated what I was saying earlier in terms of some people are spokespeople. Some people may not be spokespeople per se. Some people are writers. Some people don't really consider themselves writers. You don't have to be a writer or a spokesperson, but through simply finding content that you think is credible, is worth sharing. If you take literally 5 or 10 minutes or maybe more out of your day and just say, you know what, I'm going to spend some time sharing good information with people who are hopefully prepared to receive it. And of course, there's different gradations of how receptive people are, but the process of taking a moment out of your day and consistently, some time out of your week to be a purveyor of information is really
Mhm.
helping things down the road in terms of getting the public educated as to what's happening, because that's something that I realize is that we can't just achieve putting better people in power. Even if we could manage to do that and we put better people in power, we still really need the public to understand as much of the groundwork as possible to understand what's going on and what's at stake. And I really do think that that's key in fixing this big mess that's been created through this, what I call the
Mhm.
emergence of the biosecurity state.
Mhm.
We had a space, an end all tyranny space, a couple nights ago that was focused on personal accounts in terms of what we've witnessed, what we've experienced in terms of vaccine injury. And that's sort of the
Mhm.
focus of my recent article. And
Mhm.
there's so many stories that just, as I recall various things that happened after the rollout of the COVID injections, there's really almost too many things to recount. One story reminds me of another, or I'll hear someone else talk and say, oh yeah, wait a second. I also remember a similar situation. And, we have the died suddenly cases. We have relatively young people who suddenly have heart conditions. We have the turbo cancers. We have just any number
Mhm.
of strange stories, including, a friend of mine who didn't want to take the shots wound up with a swollen scrotum that he had to have
Mhm.
a medical procedure to have fluid drained from his scrotum. I heard of a situation where one of our members was saying that someone that they knew was just bleeding out of their wrists and there was no cuts. There wasn't an apparent
Mhm.
wound, but they were bleeding out of their wrists almost like they were sweating blood. Um,
Mhm.
I remember a friend of mine who I never remember her having even the slightest blemish on her skin, who was hospitalized with this serious skin condition out of
Mhm.
nowhere. What are just some of the things that you've observed in terms of actual vaccine injury since the rollout of the COVID shots?
Well, I've had 24 people that I've known through to various levels. Some people were family members, some were friends, some were, coworkers, people that I knew, from a distance. I've had 24 people die. Um, and that's just unheard of. Typically you can go like 10 years and then you might have three people die and that's it. And I've had just the countless stories. It almost turns into a thing where as soon as you hear that someone got vaccinated, it might sound crazy, but I almost immediately start going through the grieving process because I know what's coming for them. And um and it's just crazy. I mean, I in one family alone, three brothers came down with cancer and two of them died, and the only one that actually lived was the one that came to me and said, hey, I know that you know what to do to cure this. Tell me what to do. And so I gave him a list of things that he could choose from, and he did. And within 3 months his stage 3 colon cancer was gone. And but it's very, it's very concerning. I what I see is that even people who have not been vaccinated are being affected by it. People who have done everything that they can to not be shed on, to not be with anybody who is vaccinated or anything like that. Even those individuals are being affected because they're putting it in our food, and who knows what they're spraying on us, and it's in our water system because obviously when a person is vaccinated, it's going to come out through their stool and through their urine, and that's going to get cycled back. And I'm pretty sure that the reverse osmosis is not equipped to handle that. And it's concerning. I think that the best thing that anybody can do is try to make sure that you are doing everything that you can to nutritionally help yourself. Um, Take some ivermectin, do the hydroxychloroquine, and if you can grow it, or if you can find someone that that grew it or raised it, that's where you should be trying to get your food from, because they have made sure that it's almost impossible to avoid this.
They really have. And you mentioned, knowing where your food comes from. It seems like a major portion of the movement that needs to happen is about exactly that,
Yeah.
strengthening the family farms and people establishing relationships with those family farms, knowing exactly where your food comes from, avoiding processed foods and this big industrial process that goes
Mhm.
on around our food and what we feed to our families. What would you say in terms of the world at large and some of the ways things are changing rapidly, some of the really big concerns like the central bank digital currency, the 15-minute cities, this kind of dystopian agenda that seems to be unfurling? What's your perception of the world to come and what the average citizen needs to do on the one hand and what they need to be prepared to resist on the other?
Well, if I can go back just a moment, what I would like to say is that when I was in critical condition, I want to go back to nutrition a little bit just for a moment, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Um, what I have found is that one of the main deficiencies that people have is copper, and these 5G towers, and as well as these smart meters and our technology is actually oxidize. It's causing like an oxidation of the copper within our body, and copper is what makes iron accessible, which is what creates your blood cells, and it's also what regulates the coagulation, so your blood clotting, it's what regulates that. So it's very important that you are getting in some form of copper, whether you're drinking out of copper vessels, like put your water in a copper vessel and let it sit overnight and then drink it. Wear copper jewelry. uh, I find it very interesting that they're removing that they're not going to be making the copper pennies, because copper is so important to us. And or you can also take sovereign copper, which is a liquid form. That's what I used. That actually saved my life, along with eating liver. I would say, even if you don't like liver, try to eat liver a couple times a week to keep your copper levels up, because the more we get exposed to this stuff, the harder it is for our body to maintain the proper copper levels. And but if you find yourself in a situation where you've got a low blood count, you need to make sure that you are eating liver a couple times a day. Do not rely on just, steak and that kind of thing. You need to actually have very, very dense and rich organ meat. Oysters are really powerful too. And I believe, honestly, that's one of the major reasons why I am alive, is because of that. And so I would just like to encourage people to do some preventative work as far as making sure that you are getting that copper in. And So I just wanted to make sure that I stated that because that is so crucial when it comes to making sure you're not having strokes and pulmonary embolisms and all that.
Yeah, good advice.
Mhm.
Um,
So
so
it,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, I was just gonna say, in terms of the dystopian society, and I mean
Mhm.
all the concerns that we have about what's happening in our schools, about um, these unelected agencies, these conglomerates, and this sort of power play that's happening all around the world. In addition to the good health advice you gave, what are some of the things that you think people need to keep an eye out for as this, for lack of a better term, perhaps the new world order is unfolding before our eyes?
I would say try to get as independent from the matrix as possible. Do not engage. Um, do not engage with hospitals unless you absolutely have to, like it's an emergency. Do not engage with, the schooling systems. Teach your kids at home. They're going to be far smarter. I can tell you what, my youngest, he is homeschooled. And I'll just tell you what, like he just built, my 13-year-old just built my website, freedomdeclaration.com, and he did a fantastic job. And if you homeschool your kids, I can guarantee you they are going to be smarter. They are going to be more morally sound. They're going to be more respectful. And you might think that it's difficult, but it really isn't. It's been proven that 3 hours after a child studies for 3 hours after that, anything beyond that point, they actually start losing what they have learned. And so I would encourage you to do that. I would encourage you, excuse me, I feel like I'm going to sneeze. I would encourage you to try to get yourself into a position where you can grow your produce, do some canning. If you can't do that, then try to connect yourself with people who can, who you can get it from. Um, Try to get yourself as much as you can out of the system, so whether it is um, not purchasing your groceries from the grocery store, get your meat from someone that you actually know if you can. And get resourceful. I mean, if you can't afford to go buy half of a cow and you don't have the ability to have a freezer, then team up with other people that might be having the same problem and go in on it together. Get resourceful and just try not to engage, because the more you engage, the more you're basically saying, I'm going to give you some kind of authority, because anytime they give you something, it's not for nothing. You're giving away some kind of authority. You're giving them an entry point to your life. And another thing is you need to make sure that you have your documents printed. Do not rely on the fact that you have them on your computer. You need to make sure that you have physical copies that are already printed out, that are already notarized, and you need to have them in a safe, secure place, because if the internet was to be knocked out or something was to take place that would knock you out where you can't get on that computer, most of us cannot articulate our rights. Most of us would not be capable of, writing up a handwritten note that would notify people that we are invoking our rights. That's another thing. Everyone has rights, but you have to invoke them. And that means that you're notifying them that you are activating them. That's one of the things where people mess up. It's the same thing as the Fifth Amendment. You invoke your Fifth Amendment, right? Same thing when it comes to your First Amendment, your Second Amendment, everything. You have to invoke it for it to be active. And I would just encourage people, get your documents, get things in a row. It's going to be a stress reliever for you. I would encourage you to have a binder that has all your medical information in there, that has everything written out, what your wishes are, have a living will, have a medical directive. If you do not want organ donation, then you need to have a document that says that you do not consent to anatomical gifts, which I have those on my website. Um, But you need to have those things get them in order now, because then you can just know that, hey, it's right here. I don't have to go searching and trying to remember who is Becca Joyce. It's all right here. It's ready to go. And I'm ready and prepared to defend and protect my family. And that's what I would say. And if you can get yourself and your family out in the country, get yourself out in the country, get out of the cities and just disengage as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great list you provided there. We're just about out of time here, so I would love if you took a moment to tell us where we can follow you. Of course, we mentioned Substack already, but if you could reiterate uh, that account and any other place where people can support and keep track of your work.
Yeah, so I have a website, beccajoyce.com, and that just is like a one pager, and it just describes the work that I've done. And then it also has an AI twin where you can ask it questions and you can send me a message if you want. That's an option. You can also go to freedomdeclaration.com, and there is a resource section in there that I don't think you're going to find a more in-depth resource section. It even has a list of attorneys in all 50 states. It has resources for doctors in all 50 states, as well as all the vaccine information that you could possibly want. There is a blog on there, and keep in mind, more is being added as we're going along. But you can do that. You can also, on that page, you can get religious exemptions. You can get medical directive cards, as well as vaccine exemption cards and non-consent of anatomical gift cards. Little plastic cards for your wallet. So those things are available if you're actually interested in that. And and you can always shoot me a message if there's something that you're looking for or you think would be great for me to add to the site. I'm always open to those things. And if you reach out to me on Facebook, my name is Becca Joyce on there. And if you need help, if you need one-on-one guidance, I'm more than happy to get on the phone with you and actually help you.
That's tremendous. Thank you so much for sharing those resources. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. And yeah, I really commend you with all the work that you're doing. It's exceptional. And I really hope that people start discovering your Substack and seeing what a great resource it is in addition to the websites you just mentioned. So
Mhm.
for everyone listening, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. We will have End All Tyranny tonight. That will be the Bassline Extra edition, the Friday night edition of End All Tyranny on X. You can look me up at Earth Driver on X. Please join our community. Please partake in the discussion. And everyone have a great day. Have a great weekend. And we will be back next week with another outstanding guest. Thank you and take care.